Your first 90 days in a new role can make or break your career. But do you want to know how to impress your boss, build trust with your team, and set yourself up for long-term success? Then stick around, because in this video, we're going to go through proven strategies and tips that can make you successful from day one in a new role. And why should you listen to me talk about this advice? Because I've been there. I've got 20 years experience in the corporate world, now leading at the executive management level, an engineering and product team at one of the world's largest investment banks. So I know what it takes to make a real impact early on in a new role. These tips aren't just theories. These are proven strategies that I've employed, and also those that I've mentored to get them to the top. So if you want to make sure that you start your new role hitting the ground running and setting yourself up for success, and this is the video for you. So let's get straight into it. We're going to start by talking about your first 30 days in a new role. So if you're joining a new company and you're thinking about how do I make an impact in my first 30 days, there are a lot of things that you can do. At this stage, it's really about perception. The first thing you need to do is build trust with your team. Now, trust takes a long time to build, but you're going to start setting the early foundations for this, and by having a non-threatening, egoless approach to the work, but also to the people around you. You're not going to come into the organization and think about, well, all the things that are wrong, and start vocalizing that and start really trying to rub people up the wrong way or step on people's toes. You do not want to do that in the first 30 days. What you want to focus on in the trust building phase of the first 30 days is to not throw yourself into these team members and trying to build relationships like your best mates and you've got each other's backs early on. You do not want to do that. You want this to be authentic and take time. So in your first 30 days, do a lot of active listening with those team members, get to know them, get them also to know you, your background and your value. Because what it comes down to right now is how useful you can be to them and how you can also make use of their skills in a team. But do this early on. Start really thinking about building relationships in a positive way, be more thoughtful and do more listening as opposed to speaking out at this stage. The next thing you want to do is understand the culture of the entire organization. You need to really sit back and take a helicopter view. Start looking at how people communicate. You want to look at how decisions are made, but you also want to look at how teams operate together. Firstly, within your own department, and then looking more broadly at the entire organization. You always need to maintain your authenticity at work. That is a non-negotiable. Do not go into a job trying to be someone else, because sooner or later you will stumble. You need to be yourself. But what you also need to do is align yourself to that company culture. So where you see the way people are working, you spotted the high performers, or you understand how decisions are being made, start to get yourself into that way of speaking, that way of behaving, that way of acting that will allow you to sit into the culture nicely and not stick out. And whilst you're now building some relationships with your team, but also understanding the company culture and understanding how teams collaborate, you're going to get to a stage where you'll understand who the key stakeholders are. Now, it could be that you ask your line manager, who are the people that I need to meet in my first 30 days. You could ask that of your line manager, but what you also want to do is look beyond your line manager's immediate needs, because your line manager's immediate needs would be around their particular role, your team's role, and just the peer group around them. And that's a good place to start. But as you start to understand the wider company, start to understand which people outside of your own team, in your peer groups or in other departments, that you would like to meet or introduce yourself to, where you think there would be benefit, in terms of your skill set, what your team does, but also the way you could interact with those teams in future. And this is starting your journey of networking and network building. It's always good to do this early on when you first start in an organization, because there's little perception or little background of yourself and what you've done. So what you're bringing really is you're starting this relationship from fresh with a new stakeholder, and you're trying to understand what they want to do you what their tasks are and what their aims are and how you can sort of align to that as well. So a lot of listening, a lot of selling yourself and your skills as well, but in a subtle way. But also what you're doing is building that lateral connection of stakeholders across the organization. Once you start to paint this picture of all of the stakeholders, you also want to make sure you write down their priorities. Now, we've said that you're going to ask them this in the first meetings you have. Really start to write this all down so you understand what everyone's expectations are, and this will help you form a mental map of what all of the pieces of work that are going on across your company. Even if this is a large company, do not feel overwhelmed. All of these priorities may sound vast, but when you get into even work in a large organization, you'll realize actually that all of it is quite laser focused, and when you get into the work you can actually make quite an impact. But just bear in mind that you need to understand and form this map of who these people are and what their influence is, and also what their priorities are. In your first 30 days, you also need to start clarifying your objectives with your line manager. Now, this is more about expectations right now. It may not be very clear what your real objectives are, but really start to understand the scope of what you're trying to do. Have a conversation, make it more conversational about what the expectations are from your line manager. There could be some immediate priorities that you can work on. There may be some longer term things that you need to think about, but this will only get dealt with by having those conversations with your line manager. And if your line manager isn't forthcoming with setting this structure up for you, be proactive, set up a call or meet them face to face and have this conversation about what the expectations are, but what the priorities are as well. Make yourself seem keen, but also attentive and wanting to do this to help the team. Now, there's a lot of advice out there in terms of asking questions or making sure you ask lots of questions. And there is pros and cons to this. So you should obviously ask questions, but do not ask the same thing repeatedly, and do not go in to too much detail in a recursive way about something where you're just getting stuck in asking lots of detail to the point where you're frustrating the other person. You have to be really careful with how you ask questions and when you do it. So there's a little bit of self-awareness that is involved here, but it's obviously important for you to clarify things. But if you're not getting that clarity from the person you need to speak to, maybe speak to other people in the team and see if they have that clarity, but do not just keep going to the same person and asking the same questions. In your first 30 days, you're going to do a lot of absorbing. Absorbing information is key here. It could be information with your own team, outside of your team, but you should also be looking at your company's annual report if they have one, to see what their objectives are. There could be a departmental level objective setting or something from your function. If you're in a very large organization, there's always a most recent town hall event or an all hands or some sort of forum where you can understand what the priorities are for that quarter. Now, it's important that you understand this and you start to understand your role and how it fits to the larger picture. It's not good to go into a job and not understand where you fit in the larger chain between yourself and the customer. Who is the customer? It could be internal customers, as in other employees, or it could be external customers outside of your business, or consumers effectively. But either way, you need to understand your role, because it's important for you to have the purpose in your mind of what it is you're doing, which will help you then to see opportunities where you can add value later on in your career. So that's your first 30 days. You've got into setting a positive tone. You've been very eager to learn, done a lot of listening, introduced yourself to key stakeholders. Perhaps you've done some small tasks as well in your first 30 days to show that you're willing to just chip in. You've been very egoless in your approach, and you started to build relationships slowly with your team members. And by the end of the first 30 days, all the people that need to know that you're in the company you're in should know by now, the immediate circle around your line manager. But also, if you've been proactive enough, there are some key stakeholders outside in the wider organization. They should know who you are as well. But fear not if that has not happened in the first 30 days. You've still got your first really 90 days where you're seen as a new person in a company, and then you can just take that forward. But let's talk about now your 60 days. So your 30 to 60 day period. Now you've done your first month. In your 30 to 60 day period, you really need to start accelerating a bit the relationship building that you've got with your team. So now that you've started setting the foundations in the first 30 days, in the 60-day period, you want to be able to work deeper with them, maybe starting to have more collaborative conversations about work, putting your opinions there, but in a positive way. But you're really starting to now build the relationships, understand what those people in a team do, understand the people in a team who you should align yourselves with. There could be people in a team who are detractors if it's not a healthy team environment. Let's be realistic. Not all teams are healthy. There could be a large majority of good influencers and, impactful people, but you could have a few detractors. You should have worked out by now who those detractors are, and do not circle yourself around the detractors. At this stage, you should listen and be very kind of passive in your conversations with them, but do not get tied into any sort of long-winded or frictionful conversations with the detractors in your team. And in the first 60 days, you're showing support for your team members, you're helping them with early wins. Keep it really egoless still. You're there to do a job, and you can do the tasks obviously that you've agreed with your line manager, but also help team members where appropriate, show them that you're dependable. At this stage also, you should have set up a regular cadence with your line manager or with stakeholders. So in the 30 to 60 day period now, we're getting to the place where you're going to start getting work done in a regular fashion. So if your line manager has not set up a cadence, a one-to-one, for example, with you, have that set up. But also, if your line manager has not asked about the work, do not wait to be asked for this stuff. You should be managing up. Managing up means on a weekly basis, maybe sending an email to your line manager that says the things that you've done this week, the things that you're going to focus on next week. Really be proactive in showing them what you're doing and where you're heading effectively. And they can then comment on whether that's the right direction they want you to work in or not. But do not leave it until the line manager has asked you these things. You should be proactive in setting these things up. And at this stage now, 30 to 60 days in, you will know what the quick wins are. There may be some small tasks or things that you've been brought in with your skill set that you can solve very easily. These things should not be political in nature. You should avoid those for now, and we'll get into that in the longer term. But really, these are frictionless tasks where maybe you have full control over what could happen, or it's an easy conversation with another team to get resolved. But these should be small things that you can then show your team and your wider department that you're working on to fix and improve processes or tasks that your line manager has asked you to. So now that you've been in the company for 30 days, you're in your 30 to 60 day phase, you want to think about the tools that you need to learn in more detail. There'll be processes that you may have gone through that you learn new tools, but there may be tools that you're owning or tools that you need to work on day to day, and getting into the detail of those. This is your time to do it in your 30 to 60 days now, where you're getting more embedded in the team, understanding the tools and the processes at a deeper level, and really starting to carve your role in those processes. It could be that there are people already working in these processes in your corporation, but you need to start aligning where you fit into that, how you can help add value, or maybe help to start change these processes if needed. And in the first 60 days, I personally have always thought about my strategic impact further afield than what my current role is. So obviously you go into a job and you've got a specific role in a specific team, but it's starting to think now about your own personal skills and where you can add value more widely in the company strategy. So this is more thinking about the larger organizational strategy now. And you can start to do that. You'll start to understand, are there people in teams further afield that have influence and power, that where you can start to align with those individuals as well, and you can start to help them maybe do projects on the side, but also not impacting your job that you're there to do, but to show that you are there and you're aligned to that journey as well. But start thinking about your strategic impact you can have more widely than your existing role. So if you're in the 60 to 90 day phase now, so you've done your first 2 months, you're into your third month in a role, this is now where you can start to use measurements, where you can start to bring in data to show what you've done. So it could be data to show some improvement you've made. It could be data to show what you've been working on, where you have significantly changed a KPI. At this point in time, it is still your first 3 months, so do not be too hard on yourself. But if you want to be set up for success, having some metrics or some change before and after that you can demonstrate, this is the time to sort of do it in your first 3 months. There could be a milestone that you've hit in a project, or it could be that you've helped someone else accelerate their work that they need to get done. And again, that is perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be something that you've owned, but what you need to do is show where you've contributed and added value to that. Now, 2 to 3 month stage, you should be able to paint a picture of the short-term wins that need to happen and the long-term plan. Put that plan together and propose it. Show it to your line manager, show it to peers, stakeholders that you're working with on projects. But really, you're thinking about what is the long-term future and what are the things that we need to get to, but also understanding the work that you're doing right now. And this is from your perspective. You may have taken a few of the information that you've got from around the business. It could be, like I said, the departmental goals, your project goals, but then also what you think you can add to help the longer term be successful. So start bringing your own personality, your own authenticity and skills into this as well. These ideas are best to be presented to not just your line manager, but anyone that you're working with who you think is a stakeholder. Could be someone in a cross-functional project that you're working with. But at this stage, because you've delivered something already and you've got the data there, you are now credible enough to share ideas. Sharing ideas sometimes when you have not got that foundation can backfire and can just be seen as things that people glaze over and don't take seriously. But at this 3 month period where you have now done some deliveries, you've got some data behind you, built a bit of a good reputation for yourself being dependable. Now it's time for you to present these ideas that you've put in this long-term strategy and do it to the right people in the organization you're in. It may resonate with some, it may not resonate, but either way, you should feel proactive enough to do this, and just hopefully it will land with some individuals in the company you're in. And if you've noticed a pattern here, when you get to this 3 month stage, you're actually becoming more visible because you're putting yourself out there more and you're saying, I'm the person who's done X, Y, and Z in this company. Now I'm thinking about these ideas, and this visibility is helping to build your reputation, which is important, a positive reputation. But likewise, you also want to start showing people that you are there to help them, but also have your own ideas. And this is how you build yourself into more of a leader. When you're sharing these ideas, you also deepen relationships with stakeholders. You'll work out the people that are wanting to listen and genuinely care about what you have to say, and those that just do not have time. And you can start to work that out and work out who are the people that you should align yourselves with, who would help accelerate your career effectively. So as you start to position yourself as this trusted partner, someone who can get things done, someone who can work across different teams, bring people together, that is always the best sort of persona you want to have in an organization. At this stage, you've noticed that I've not said anything about criticizing processes. So this is something that you should not do in your first 3 months. If you have spotted flaws in processes, if there are things you can correct and work on independently, then do that and show these in a positive way. But you do not want to be the person who is just vocalizing problems, just always bringing up problems with no solutions. That is going to shut down your credibility, ruin your reputation. You just will not be seen as a dependable, trusted partner, just someone who is going to probably moan about things that may be happening. So do not go in and start talking about all the things that aren't working, or this is how I used to do it in my previous role. It was so much better with the setup and all of this. Do not talk and use language to that effect. You are in that organization with people who have been in that role, in that organization for a while. They do not know or care for how it's done outside. All they know is they want to make their lives easier within the role they're in. So be mindful, be empathetic around that as well. And by the time you get to your end of your 90 days, you want to also seek feedback. There's usually a process within the first 30, 60, 90 days where there is some form of a conversation or feedback you can get. And this can be informal feedback as well. If you've built good, strong relationships with stakeholders, you can ask for feedback in terms of, how you think the project is going, your delivery so far, where could you be more useful for those people as well, and just find ways to understand what the company is asking of you effectively, and finding that feedback and getting that in your first 90 days. If you follow these steps, this should set you up for success over your first 90 days. And let's not forget the attitude you should have across this new role and these 90 days. It should always be consistent, and it should be the following. It should be that you stay humble. You should always stay humble, and I'm hoping that you've seen that throughout how I've communicated this video out, effectively around being egoless and just being someone who is there to help. You have your own goals and you are passionate and you're driven, but you can equally be humble and try to understand that you are there to help others as well, share collective goals. You need to always stay curious, be really infused, and that curiosity can really show your credibility and your reputation to be a positive one. Curious people ask the right questions. They're not always moaning about things, but they're trying to ask how to improve a process, or how we might be able to work with another team that you've identified having similar issues, come together to solve a problem together. A curious person brings ideas and brings people together, but also is always trying to be positively impacting and changing a company for the better. Always prioritize communication in your first 90 days. And if communication is a struggle for you, if it's something that you do not find natural, make the extra effort to be better at it. And that means do not end the week without sending that email to your line manager with all the things that you've done. Do not avoid meetings just because you just feel like you don't want to put yourself out there. Really try and push yourself to have consistent communication, because when it comes down to it, distilling it as you get in a company, go up the ladder into executive management, the communication is the thing that holds you accountable. It's the thing that holds you together. It's what drives your performance and your success. So really prioritize communication as key. Even if you really feel like you're stretching yourself for the work you're doing, always prioritize moments where you are being transparent and open and you're able to share what you're doing with other people. This may vary from company to company, but in any case you should document what you've been doing, or you should document any decisions or ideas or process improvements. Have everything documented for your own benefit, but then also in future, if you need to evidence for your performance how you've been doing as well. Documenting is something that I think a lot of people miss doing, and then when there are situations that may arise, or political matters in a between two teams or in a project, if you hadn't had decisions documented or thought processes documented or emailed out, it becomes really tricky for you to then go back, and it just becomes a sort of verbal, the wishy-washy, whoever has the most influence can say what they want. So really try your best to document as much as possible and get in the habit of doing that, especially where decisions are being made. And think of yourself as you are, but really try your best to balance that with team. The team and the team wins, because yes, you are there as an individual and you want to stand out, but you are also going to stand out by helping the bigger team. And in the first 90 days, you want to leave that sort of period of your career in the new role feeling that you are a valued team member. You're there for the team win, but you're equally there on balance to show that you've got skills that can help take the company forward as well. So really it's a balance between those three things in your first 90 days. We've covered a lot of different items there, but if you focus on doing these things, I guarantee you'll be successful. Not only will you have a positive and credible outlook and a reputation, but you'll also be setting yourselves up from a networking perspective and showing your skills off as well. And this is great, because if you do that in your first 90 days, you're already set for accelerated growth in your first year. And by the end of your first year going to your second, promotion opportunities will be available for you. That's exactly what happened to me even at the latest investment bank that I am in. being in the bank only 2 years and already having been promoted, and going forward, this is something that you need to employ, whether you're in a small, medium or large organization. These skills will help you to do best. And I'd love to hear from you how this is going, which skills have you used. If you want to know more information about a particular skill set or particular period, let's discuss that in the comments. Happy to take it forward. If you like this video and want to see more content, then check out my channel. I've got lots of content around growing as a leader, but also specifically in the technology, engineering and product space as well. So do check out my other videos. I'll link a few here, and see you in the next one.